Hello everyone. In this video, you will learn how to create an animation while navigating a page. This video, I will go through how to create a pagination on the client side, and when you paginate between the pages, there is an animation happening on the element within the page. So this sample would use the jPages jQuery plugin. This is a very old plugin. I have been using it for a long time. It's a long time this plugin has been there. The only reason which I was choosing this to use that the animation when it happens while paginating, it was smooth, and you can delay those animation using your delay command, and it works with most of the jQuery versions. And you can download the jPages from the link which I have mentioned here. I'll also put the link in the description of the video. And to start with, you need to first download the jPages and upload it into your SharePoint in the folder or in the document library, whichever the document library which you are looking for. In my case, I uploaded it into site assets. You can see the bottom image, which is the CSS image and the JS. All the assets from the jPages I just uploaded into there. Why? Because jPages doesn't have any npm command to install it into your SPFx. So the only way to install it using just copy paste into your SharePoint folder. And finally, once everything is done, the page would look like this. As usual, I will use my animal taxonomy as my command, and I would add the property pages to change the animation within the pages. Okay, let's start working on the demo. As you see here, I would use the standard command to create the project jPages animate, and animate jPages is my web part name, and you have all the other parameter. As you can see here, you can split the command into a different line using this keyword or the character which you can see here, and use it to put it in a separate line. It would start creating a project for me. I would use this to set the project. So the creation of the project has been completed. Now I'm going to install the jQuery, Bootstrap, and the necessary dependency. So first I would open the project in my Visual Studio. You can see the project which has opened in the Visual Studio here. And once it is opened in the Visual Studio, I would go to the package.json, and I would add all the dependencies in the package.json so that the packaging install is much faster other than just installing each package one by one. So what I do is I add the dependencies here. My dependencies are the PNP for animation, animate, jQuery, and the Bootstrap. Bootstrap is not mandatory, but the jQuery, animate.css, and PNP for my later demo will be my mandatory one. And you should add the types as well, like the jQuery types and the Bootstrap types, which I would use for the project. I'm going to add that too. So these two has been added. So now once the dependencies has been added in the package.json, you can directly use npm install, which I would use it from the terminal menu. I create a new terminal, then I would just say npm install. So this npm install command will install all the dependencies which are here, automatically identify and install it for you rather than installing one by one. Okay, now all the dependency has been installed, hopefully. So once it has been installed, you need to add the dependencies into the config file. So the config file you need to modify using jQuery, using your dependencies. So what I'm going to add is the dependencies of the jQuery, Bootstrap, and the jPages so that it can be loaded. I just go here and just paste your installation. So here if you see jQuery is mandatory, you need to add the jQuery dependencies, and the bootstrap you need to add, and the bootstrap dependencies also you need to add. And remember, if you see here the jPages, there is no npm install. So the jPages I am going to install using the path from the SharePoint, and the dependency I have mentioned the jQuery. Why? Because this has to be loaded only after the jQuery has been loaded. Sometimes the jQuery plugin might not work if the load is happening without loading the jQuery. And you can see my SharePoint. I've already uploaded the jPages, CSS images, and the JS inside here. So I'm referring to this in my code. This is how you install it without the npm for jPages. Once the jPages has been installed, then you can start coding in your program file. So basically I'm going to the main web part file. I'm going to change this HTML just to load the jPages to make sure that it works. Remove the previous one. And make sure you save those changes. And the next thing you should do on the web part page is that you make sure that those dependencies has been used within your web part page. So to use the dependencies, you should import all your dependent jQuery, bootstrap, or whatever the component you are looking for. Okay, so now if you see here, I have imported the jQuery, bootstrap main. This is not mandatory unless you really need it, and the animate, which is mandatory, and the jPages. This would import the jPages or the JavaScript within, but you need to bring in the jPages CSS as well. So to bring in the jQuery CSS, jPages CSS, you need the SP component loader first. So make sure you have the SP component loader. So once the SP component loader is there, you need to add onInit page, onInit method in your web part, so that in the onInit method, your, let me type here, onInit, and it is a promise method. Okay, so once you finish onInit, you'll have to call back the original onInit method from the class, its base class. So for that, you should always say super, and within that I'm going to add the SP component loader to load the CSS. So this CSS can be loaded with the absolute path of the SharePoint. So in my case, it is installed into the site assets, so the CSS will be installed. So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to add my sample HTML here. The sample, you can get it from the original page, which you can see here. You can go to later I would share the URL as well. You can go to the jPages, and there is a documentation clearly mentioned here how to use the jPages. I pick up one of the documentation and put it into my code so that it works with the plain jQuery pages. Okay, so for that I'm just going to copy a simple HTML, nothing but it would just display what are the pages within, that's it. So let me add HTML first. Okay, it would just show jPages path. I need to use the absolute path. Okay, jPages, all the images are there. The HTML is ready. So once the HTML is there, I need to use jQuery method to load or convert that into. Okay, so this is okay. Okay, I would format it and save this. So basically what I'm doing is I'm including a static text. So this is the key for the holder. Always the jPages will include, or at the runtime jPages will insert all your images or the HTML within this holder. So make sure that you use the class holder, because there is a jPages CSS which alters this class. And also make sure that you use the item container and the item container class. That's how the jPages will get the item and inject into the holder class. Okay, and for time being I'm using whatever the images which comes with the jPages, which is here. Also you can see in the demo. So if you see the demo of, for example, the mosaic, so they have some images. Those images are already in the GitHub they are using. I just uploaded all the images here. So those images you can see in my sample as well. Okay, so now what I would do is I would have to run the gulp. I would just use the gulp serve, no browser option, gulp serve no browser option. What this will do is it will build, and then I can refresh this page. I'll just wait for the build to be completed. So once the build is completed, then we can try executing the web part. Okay, the build has been completed. Now I am going to the page to show how we need to refresh this to reload the page, and hopefully I would have okay, animate jPages. This is the web part which is rightly built in. So here with this is the sample which I added, which currently works, which means that JS is loading properly and the CSS is also loading, and it has 2 pages you can navigate, and it is a mosaic format, which is basically this sample. I loaded only very few images, so you are not seeing exactly the same which are here. So now the basic jQuery based jPages is working now. My next task is to use the PNP method to query the real SharePoint list item and show it in a format. Okay, let's start doing that. Before that, I will stop this. If you notice here, we already installed the PNP.js using this package.json. So PNP.js has been installed. So what we do is we need to import that PNP.js to make sure that we use them in our code. So I would import the PNP.js now first. So PNP.js has been imported. You need to initialize that PNP.js. So initializing the PNP.js, you need to call it in the init method. So inside the init protected method which we implemented, you go back there and add the step. This is mandatory just to initialize the context. So now the PNP all set up, we can start using it. We need the list and slightly need to change our logic to make sure that it all works. So for that, as usual, when you follow any of my demo, I always create one more new class, TypeScript class, which is as usual, it's animals html.ts. It's a new separate class. This is the class which would get the item from the list and form a JavaScript or call the JavaScript to do all the steps. Okay, so let me start adding the code to it. Okay, so now in the new class, I've pasted some of the code which I would go through now. If you see this class, I have imported again the PNPSP, and this is the interface which I have implemented, which is similar to my if I go back to site content and see my organism list, I have a list which is called organisms. This organisms list will have different columns. Name is like a string, and you see picture column. So those I have defined as an interface in my code. So these are the columns which I have, and they have a subtype as well. So it is again an interface. If you notice down here, this is the text. This is the formatted HTML. So basically, I am declaring a holder, which is of the class holder. This is the holder which would be injected by the jPages, and the animal card is again a div tag. All my code will be formed using the get method to inject here the animals list. So this get list method, get list data, is nothing but it called to the PNP.js of my organism list and get all the item within that list. I have around 100 plus items which will be queried and then displayed, and it would call the get organism method. So once it call the get organism method, first I'm empty the previously, if it is any loader, I just make it empty using the jQuery method, and you call the render method to form the HTML tag for the animals card. Basically, I'm just forming an animal card with all the details and with the picture. Okay, in these scenarios you will just see the picture, but in case if you want to show more details about the animals, you can still show that. Once that is done, I am adding all the animals into a container, and the container is loaded as a jQuery jPages. This step is very important because if you are using TypeScript, sometimes you might not get the jQuery method directly. You should always typecast it to any. Then you call the jQuery method. Then it would start to work. Okay. So now I have all these methods implemented here. What I'm going to do is just call that method within the main web part here. To call that method within the main web part, you need to import that into your program, into the main web part, then call the respective method. So in my case, this is the method animals HTML. I am just declaring our HTML. So what I am going to do is that this is the static HTML which is formed anyway inside. So I'm going to delete that and just assign the org html.template, which is formed within the animals HTML. So basically, if you see here, this is the one which is assigned in the main web part. So once this is assigned, then you don't really need this, because okay, you will read the jQuery ready. You don't need to implement here. So what you need to do is you need to call the initialize method within this class, so that initialize controls. Okay, that's it. So initialize control is my method which is implemented here, which in turn calls internally some other methods to implement. So just call the method, then it will load. So that's it, all the things are done. You don't really need this anymore because that is for just a static. So this is the code change, main code change which you see in the render method, and everything, most of the coding logic is done in the other class. All other things stays as is. So now I'm going to run the browser. No browser gulp serve. The build is completed. Let me reload this. When I reload, all these animals images should be the animals images rather than the static images. Okay, you can see here this is the real effect. Okay, so now I am setting it to 8 per page. You can see it in my code. When I go to the code and initialize, so this is the static initialization. Fade in down and 8 per page is 8, and the next and the previous is the icon. You can change the animation here. For example, if I say flip X or fade in, which is fade in up. Okay, and every time you change here, it will start to build completed. Let me refresh it again. So when I refresh now, the animation should be a different animation, which, yes, so it comes from up or the down. So okay, so that's how the animation comes in. So now with this in place, now I'm going to do something like making all these parameter a kind of easy to set within the property pane. jPages has several other properties wherein you can change the pagination. You see the demo pagination, you can have different sorts of pagination. Then you can change the items which are appearing in per page. You can see the JavaScript here, item per page. You can make it configurable, like 5 or 10, depends on the configuration. They have several other properties like key browse. You can start navigating with just by the keyboard, scroll just by the mouse, and there is some other property which you can change the CSS animation. There are several other animations which you can see. This animation comes from the animate.css. Make sure that you import the animation .css. These things will come in. So now I'm going to do this as a part of property pane within the code. So let's start doing that now. To do the property pane, you need to have a property fields imported. So what I'm going to do is I'll import all the property controls which we need in my main web part page. I've imported it. So now I need to declare a variable to hold these properties. So declaring the variable for holding the properties, I'm going to just take up 2 or 3 properties which I will declare a variable and put it inside my. Okay, so basically you can be easily configuring the items per page, keyboard enablement, scroll, auto paginate, nothing but it becomes like a slideshow, automatically cycling between pages, and you can choose what animation you want to have. Once that declaration happens, you need to change your property method here. Property pane for jpage. Okay, and the group text may be something like jPages config, and I'm going to change all these values. So to accommodate all those properties which you have declared, you need to make sure the controls and other things are all in place. Okay, so let me copy those. I'm going to change this group name is there, group fields. Let me change the group fields, remove the description, and I'm going to add my own groups here. Okay, let me copy that group. I copied my group fields. You can see here all these item per page is the property name which I declared in the interface, and this one will be a choice group. Then this will be a toggle button, checkbox, and finally this would be just a radio button. Okay, given these properties are already there, we need to set this property when it is loading. So to load at runtime or when the first time it initializes, go to the web part code, source code. Inside that there will be a JSON for manifest for the web part. This manifest would have the properties which are declared when the web part is loading. So you can go back there and then add whatever the property name and what you want to have. By default, when the first time and the part is loading. So in my case, what I do, I add these properties which loads at the first time. So these values are set when property loads at the first time. So once this is done, you need to make this configurable within the code. With this property is set, now I need to make it configurable within my code. To do that, first you need to import your properties within your code. Import, let me go to the properties or the interface first. So let me import this interface from /webpart. So this has to be imported. Then you have to assign this. I'm going to declare a variable for my within my class, so that you can set that property variable. You can pass this properties to this class using this static variable, so that you can use it to assign the values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this web part pages. So basically this properties, just copy and put it here. I declare the properties, and this property we need to use it within your code. Here you have to make this as configurable. So to make it configurable, I need to add these methods within let me remove this. That's it. So now this becomes configurable. I'm just checking for auto paginate, because when it is auto paginate, you will have to set different properties, in which case the jQuery would use it. So when it is auto paginating, use this property, and if it is not auto paginating, just set other properties. That's it. And these properties has to be passed from your main property class. So go back to your property class where the render method is calling in, and use this use the same html dot props is equal to this dot properties. So all the property values which you save is stored in this dot properties. I'm just passing it to my class so I can reuse that. Okay, so that's how it works now. So now all the properties and everything is set, and let me run the gulp serve again. The build completed. Now I need to refresh the page. So when I refresh the page, it should load with the default property which is being set, but sometime for some reason it might not work at the first stage, so probably you'll have to set it later. So now if you see here, the properties are all there, jPages, and default value, as I mentioned you, sometime it might set, sometime it might not, but it's okay, fine. So now I'm setting it to 8. See here, it loads 8 first, and the keyboard navigation is disabled. I'm enabling it. So when I enable the keyboard navigation, I can use the keyboard to navigate. Okay, and scroll bar navigation, and similarly auto paginate. So the auto paginate will start to work. Let me reassign. So now it should automatically go into another page. See here, so I didn't do anything, it automatically transitioned between different pages. This becomes like a slideshow. You can use this as a slideshow as well. And also if you see, you can change the animation, bounce in left, and also zoom in. Zoom in is the one which I use it for. Zoom in down. Okay, it gives a very nice effect. And also you change it to 16, all the 16 will zoom in down. So that's how about jPages using into your application. Hope you like the video. Subscribe, share, like it if you find it really helpful. I'll upload it into GitHub, and the URL will be posted in the description panel. And thank you so much for watching the video. Stay tuned for subsequent videos, and please share this video into your community if you like the video. Thank you so much for watching. and